listening to Thunder Radio, the podcast of the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre.
Applying Indigenous knowledge to sustainable development is our topic for this podcast, but don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. As I learned, it's very much about working side by side with communities to figure out what works best for them, their land and culture, be it in Canada or in other parts of the world. And as you will hear, I learned about this from two very intelligent young ladies who are doing a master's program in Indigenous Development at the University of Winnipeg. Before I met Adesuwa and Vanessa, I didn't even realize there was a master's program that focuses on these issues. And so we had them in to talk about the program, but also many different ideas about Indigenous knowledge, food security, sustainable development, and how important these things are, especially today for our planet. So welcome here. Thanks for joining us today on our podcast. It's very exciting to have. We have two students from the University of Winnipeg who are taking the Masters in Development Practice Program, Indigenous Practice Program. No, I probably said that wrong. I should have you introduce it. So why don't you just say your names and then, either one can talk about the master's program that you're taking.
Okay. Hi, my name is Adesuwa-Ero, and I'm an international student in the Masters in Development Practice Program focused on Indigenous Development. Do you want to introduce yourself, Vanessa?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Vanessa Tait. I'm originally from Opi-Punapui Cree Nation in northern Manitoba, and I'm Cree. The Masters in Development Practice Program, as well as I'll give a little bit of insight to it, and then Adesuwa could just add to it. But what it is that it's a 2-year program, and the focus is on Indigenous development. So we do have a lot of our criteria is like Canadian Indigenous, but we also incorporate some international Indigenous as well. When we have international students, they bring their insights from their Indigenous communities based on the different courses that we're doing. So we focus in on like health, science, management science, natural science, and as well as there's social sciences. So we have courses in all those realms. They always say like we're going to be generalists. I just actually saw a TED Talk, and I said we're going to be potentialites is what I think.
That's a new one.
And it's interesting because we dive into different areas of those different areas and look at how it's from an Indigenous perspective. And the motto is do development differently. I guess because it used to be the top-down approach. So as practitioners, we're being trained to go into communities and grassroots communities and basically work alongside them, not say that this is what you need for your community. So we're learning different techniques and practicing on each other in class and stuff like that. And then there's 2 field basement components. There's an international and a domestic, and I'll just let Adesuwa add a little bit more. I don't want to take the realm of the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you've said most of it. It's an interdisciplinary program. It's a course-based program, so we don't have a thesis. So we have 2 field placements, one local, the other international. So I think that's one of the things I actually like about the program, because sometimes the other master's programs are just like thesis and a lot of coursework and all of that. But it still seems like we write a lot of thesis because you're still doing a lot of papers because our coursework is like ridiculous.
Yeah. You can't get away from papers, I guess.
Yeah. So the field placement is a very important component. So the local and international just really gives you that context. So the difference between theory and practice, and that makes you really think of all these things that you learn, but in practice there's some things that really don't apply. It's very contextual based on what you're doing and all of that. But Yeah, the MDP program is one unique program. They would say it's like the MBA of development because it's a professional development program that focuses on how we want to do sustainable development. All those buzzwords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am going to be asking you about your field placements in a little bit, but first I wanted to find out why you decided to do this program. What drew you to it?
I think for me, it started from my undergrad days. The two main courses I did, my undergrad is in sociology, and two courses that I did, urban development and rural development. Those two courses were so interesting to me, like knowing like the differences between those two in terms of like the complexities of like the social problems that are inherent in both societies and the overlap in both of them. And just on a global scale, I always look at, because I'm from a developing country, I'm like, why are we so different? Like what works here and what's not working here? The whole purpose is not to come here and learn all those things and go back and replicate it, but just to understand the context in which those things are happening. So, and I know that from my work in the community, I feel like Indigenous peoples are very, are in many ways disadvantaged and marginalized, and I always want to do development at the grassroots level. So that's one of the things that prompted me to do the master's in University of Winnipeg, because the program is actually different from other MDP programs across the world, because this is the only university that focuses on Indigenous development.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it's in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow. So Vanessa, why did you decide this program?
When I saw a flyer of it, I was like, because my background and what I have in my undergrad is a Bachelor of Commerce, and it was very mainstream, and it was very corporate, and it was very profit driven. And the whole time I was in my undergrad, I always thought, what about community? What about community? Because I always said, go forward, you want to go with your community. So, and as well, I was a national youth panelist for the Council for the Advancement of Native Development Officers, CANDU. It's a national organization that deals with economic development and certifies Aboriginal economic development officers. So I started getting interested in that field, like economic development and community development in particular is not really a discussion or a career that's talked about. So when I saw this program, it just links all of everything of development and not from a corporate perspective, but more from a community perspective. So that's how I said, I'll try it out, and then I'll apply into it. So that's what really was my interest in, as well as looking at the community and realizing that there's a lot of times when development projects come into community and communities would like to engage with the people and stuff like that, so capacity development and stuff. So it was really an interest for me, and just getting to know like the environmental stuff, because being a commerce grad, you learn the businessy stuff, and as well as the social science stuff, and and health as well, because a lot of projects affect the health of the community as well. So that was my interest when I first came in.
Yeah, great. And when all is said and done, when you're finished, when you've got through all the work, what do you hope you will accomplish?
For me, I think just building, skill, because like there's something my program director Clary always says, we're not building you to be like experts in all of this, because we take so many courses in different areas, different disciplines, but just to build skill in all of those places, because even when you go into the real world and you're working on real life projects, like it cuts across different things, and you're not, streamlined into one place. So all of these skills later will come up and you'll find them very useful later on. So I would say that to build skill, and also just, expand my own reasoning. And one thing I always do is to challenge myself to learn about other people, other things outside of what I know, So yeah, I know that the MDP program is already helping me fulfill that because, being in the MDP program through my field placement, I've got to meet like really amazing people that have built long-lasting friendships, and just interacting with people on a daily basis and doing community work and building those relationships and all those things. So I feel like I'm doing that. So regardless of knowledge and skill and all of that, I'm also building a network of people that you're gonna be able to take advantage of, because it's development work. You can never do it alone. You need people to do that. So you need to build that network of people, like your A team in quote, that would help you, accomplish whatever it is. So yeah, that is it for me.
Yeah, great. And Vanessa?
Everything. Just kidding. No. So, once I complete the program, I do a lot of everything that I do. I think I do it for not just the benefit of myself, but the benefit as well of my community. And so what I hope to do in the future is to be able to hand over my skills as well that I've learned through the Masters in Development Practice program to the community, and do training for capacity development in my community, and just trying to engage and make sure that our communities are not at a disadvantage anymore, where that might lead me. But I think most importantly, what I'd like to do is transfer my knowledge into the communities. There's many jobs that look to that. Personally, I would like to be able to just be a free spirit and be able to go into different communities rather than do the 9 to 5. So I'll be able to engage with a lot more different communities and learn from them as well, because a lot of my knowledge is from my own community and from other communities that I have worked on for a national organization, so I was able to hear different stories. So I'd like to do that a little bit more as well, and be able to empower the young ones as well to go into a field of community development and look to do stuff like that, because that's what our communities need. So that's my focus is, and I don't have a set job that I think I would do, but more of like a teacher, I guess, because that's how I came to where I am, is people have taught me and have provided knowledge to me. So I just would like to continue on with that journey.
Yeah. And switching to your field placements now, I'll just have you talk about what you've done, who you've met, where you've been, what kind of projects you worked on, that kind of thing.
Okay, I have done just my domestic field placement. So I did mine here in Winnipeg, which was last year from May to July. And I worked with the organization, the International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD. And I was assigned a national project called We Are Cities, the Cities for People, which is basically looking at how to make urban cities better, because more than 70% of the population of Canadian population apparently lives in urban cities. So how do we make this place more sustainable in terms of how we live, we work, our environment, jobs, and all of that kind of stuff? Because I volunteer for CKUW radio station. And I was introduced to Michael Champagne, who...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he's
so great.
I know. He's on the show. He hosts the show Inner City Voices. So it was just a good fit for what I was doing. So I got introduced to Michael, and since then we've been co-hosting the show together. And so I use that as an avenue to just increase my audience in terms of the people that I wanted to participate in the project I was doing. So the roundtables, and just getting to meet people on social media. So taking advantage of the station's social media presence and talking to people about it, and just letting people know that they could communicate to me too, even if they could not be physically there at the roundtables, but they could send in their opinions on what they understand of what Winnipeg is, and how they want it to be in the future. So that was what I did. So I got to meet a lot of interesting people at Monkman. I started going to Meet Me at the Bell Tower.
Oh, yes.
So met a couple of amazing people, and it's been fun ever since. Yeah.
So I haven't actually physically been to a field placement yet. My first field placement is going to be this spring and summer, and it was a self-directed. So what I had done, like my dream and goal was to go to New Zealand, right? So what I did was, I sent I had a bunch of people who knew people there and already had connections. So one of the ones that got back to me was where I'm going actually. The one I chose was the Waikato Tanua College for Research and Development, and that's in New Zealand. What I'll be doing is just considering entrepreneurial activities and the viability of turning these other traditional practices into businesses for the local Maori and the greater iwi. So so I'm learning it. It's interesting because to be able to, I haven't left Canada, so it's going to be a very interesting trip for me. I'm going to be going there for about 3 months. So we're going to be, working and living and breathing Maori culture, which is great because that's what that was my goal, was to be able to just be embraced by a different culture, and as well as bring what I can bring to the table and help them out with their with my skills and my knowledge as well too, and then just look to see, just to be able to learn from each other is like the most important thing, and then just see what comes of it. So I'm very excited. Like I'm very scared too. I can't say I'm not only, but I'm like, because it's like, a whole new world, a whole new. Right now it's their summer, so it looks beautiful there. When I go there, it's going to be their winter. So even to learn that I'm not going to have my summer season very just a little bit. I'll catch the little bit of it at the end there, but just to be able to go there and just engaging with the ladies from Sarah and as well as Amy, and learning their language as well, like the iwi is the greater so just I have like a little vocabulary book that I've started, New Zealand Maori words, so they're excited to have us as well. I'm going as well with another student. Her name is Leah. So she's going to be coming along with me, and she's doing more of the youth, the education curriculum. But we'll be working alongside each other. So so what I'm going to be doing is coming to the University of Winnipeg and sitting with their business and economics department and looking at the undergrad degree for Indigenous students here in I guess Manitoba. And so how that looks, I don't know, but we're gonna venture off into that. I like to do new things, and I've developed different things in the past as well too around those programs. So I'm really excited. So I kind of have an idea of where those 2 field placements are going to be, and I'd probably be able to tell you a little bit more about them once I do them.
Yeah, well, I hope you will.
Yeah.
They sound amazing. And since it seems to be such a, like you mentioned, such a big focus of the program to actually go and do work in the communities and not just, write a paper about them. So it sounds wonderful. It sounds awesome. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the issues that I think might come up in your program. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but something that I've been learning about recently is Indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge. And in my own reading, I'm finding that it's not something that's easy to define, and it's not something that has like a box that you put it in and say this is what it is. But I am going to try and I'm going to ask you to try and do that and sort of, I guess, summarize if you can. I'm really interested to know if, like, for instance, in Nigeria it's different than Indigenous knowledge in Canada, or if you find similarities, or so what is it?
When I was looking at thinking of these questions, I was like, because I actually wrote a paper last semester on Indigenous knowledge, and how there are so many misconceptions around, its definition and what it is and how what it does basically, and I think the problem with trying to define what Indigenous knowledge is even trying to name it, because some people would reject that term indigenous, and it can be very political, because someone can say, I don't identify as indigenous, and some people identify as indigenous. Or you can call it traditional knowledge, and some people will interpret it as a knowledge as of the past and has no relevance or meaning in contemporary society. So there are so many problems with trying to name it, and exactly what you said, like, you cannot just put it in a box and say this is what it is, because I feel like it's so contextual, it's so different, because there are like similarities across different societies, but then in their innate sense, they're very different. So if I would try to define it, I would just say a knowledge that is specific to a particular group in a geographical area, and it could cut across tangible and intangible aspects of culture. So like their land, their language, it cuts across different things, and their land use and all of that. So I don't know what I would call it. Honestly, I wouldn't call it indigenous development, but I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I know that it's not just something you can, define accurately the way we try to do it in this Eurocentric sense. It doesn't work like that for indigenous people. So yeah, that's my opinion. Vanessa?
For me, like I said, indigenous knowledge, I was looking at the question as well, and so you had asked if it was different from Canada and Nigeria. Definitely, they have their different cultures, and they have their different values and beliefs and ways of doing things. It's even different within Canada, within different indigenous groups. I'm just going to speak on my personal perspective, and just as I walk and as I learn different, because all that I know is actually stories that have been taught to me from when I was young until now. So I'm learning different. I'm being gifted different knowledge from different indigenous people, from elders to even young ones. So I guess in my community, we're up in northern Manitoba. We're a very hunter-gatherer society. So what they have, the indigenous knowledge there is the knowledge of the land and the knowledge of hunting and different ways of life there. So growing up, that my brothers, that's what they do now. So to me, that's indigenous knowledge in my community. And then there's the traditional and the indigenous knowledge and the teachings of growing up. We used to hear the stories of Nana Bush. So for me, that's was a teaching to teach us as we were getting older. And I come to different circles and meet different elders, from Anishinaabe elders to Cree elders, to Dakota elders. So they have their teachings of how their communities. And as well as spiritual teachings as well, right? And ceremony. So there's a lot of aspects to indigenous knowledge. And I believe that for me, my indigenous knowledge is my story. So for me, I can say that, that's my indigenous knowledge, is growing up is, my story. I think that it's the different values and the different teachings and different gifts. And as well as, along the way you get different ceremonies and stuff like that. So that's it is a very like, again, you can't put it in a box, because two people sitting together have might have a different indigenous knowledge for themselves, right? So there's a lot of different aspects, and I don't even want to attempt to try and put something in the box, because like I said, it's just the different, as you're growing up, the different stories and stuff that you're being taught. So I guess whatever is true to your heart is your indigenous knowledge. Mm-hmm.
And just to add to that, like even they usually say Africans are like generally indigenous. I don't know how true that is, but but like like, we don't call it indigenous there. That's one of the problems too with, naming it or the terminologies that we use. They're like tribes and ethnic groups, and, they have their own culture and way of doing things, and, the way their rites of marriage, or how, their traditional attires, like, it's beautiful and colorful and all of that kind of stuff. But, they have their own language, and it could be very similar, which I noticed that it's also common here in Canada. So, we always say sometimes how different we are, but there are also very strong similarities too. The way here to coming to Canada, I never thought about Indigenous people. I never thought that existed. That culture that you see here, and I came here, I'm like, wow, like, this is existing. We're not so different after all, because they have their own culture, their language, their, way of dressing, and, it's beautiful and colorful, and that's just the same thing back home, so regardless of maybe there's some things that sets us apart, there's so many things that, brings us together as well. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's amazing culture. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I'm curious. I know here a lot of, I guess elders are known to be more of the Indigenous knowledge keepers, and a lot of in some of the different First Nations. And is it the same?
Yeah. Definitely. There's that one. They're like elders in like different communities and villages and all of that, but you usually have those one elders that have been there, and they like know everything, about the history and all of that stuff. But yeah, definitely it's the same thing. They have elders, and they are seen as the, knowledge keepers. Yeah.
Can you describe how Indigenous knowledge, if it's, now I feel like, is it okay to use that term? I feel like
it's okay for this context. It's
for this context, yes. How the role it plays when it comes to sustainable development, which is also another difficult term to define.
Yeah.
But if you could speak about that for a bit.
You want to go first?
Well, there's often the saying of the next 7 generations here, and so I think like sustainable development, it's such a vague term, but what it is like, it needs to, without comprising future generations. So that's what came to mind to me, was the next 7 generations. What I do today is going to affect the next 7 generations. So I think with Indigenous knowledge, again, making sure that the teachings that, I've been given, that they were from, previous generations and stuff like that. And so that we're actually, empowering our youth, and then providing them those stories and providing them those teachings, and as well as understanding our communities and our values and our beliefs and our systems and our communities. And that, no mainstream or no development project is going to infringe on allowing those to disappear. Let me just say that. Like in my community, we do have, hydro development that's, running right through my community. And, we've been uprooted from our old settlement, and now we're in a new settlement. And even there you could see the devastating effects on our Indigenous knowledge there, because, again, a lot of the young ones are... like before, there used to be islands, and then they're gone, they take them out hunting and stuff like that. So a lot of that is just... it's not being lost, but there's something going on, and I don't want to say it's being lost because it's still there, but it really affected the community in that way, because that was their livelihood. That was how they sustained themselves, because prior to again, hydro development, the stories that I've heard is that we never really depended on welfare. We weren't dependent on the programs and the systems that the government's giving us now. So we were able to be able to flourish as a community, and we worked together. There was the value of sharing, and the value of respecting one another, and the value of all those things. So I think when you say sustainable development, it's like as well to sustain our knowledge systems as well, because we don't want to allow them to, again, use a metaphor of run down the stream and not to be seen again, because that's what is important, is that we for myself is important is that I do understand my roots, and I understand where I come from, and I'm grounded in that area. Wherever I may go, I'll always still belong to, northern Manitoba, even if I, end up in New Zealand, or, I'll always know who I am, and, who my people are, and stuff like that. So I think that that's what's important as well, is that that's how Indigenous knowledge plays a role, is that, we're passing it on, and then as well as we're not losing it because of, mainstream's way of doing things, I guess. Yeah.
Just in addition to that, like coming from the perspective of the MDP program, and the whole focus or the purpose is to do development differently than what it has been in the past, and usually development practitioners they go into communities and they don't understand their perspective, and you have this Eurocentric thought that you're going to do something for them. Meanwhile, you think that they don't know what they want for themselves, and you think that you're the one to dish out those things to them. And that I think it comes from the way we're schooled. You go into classrooms and there's this teacher-student relationship that's like master-servant relationship, and the student is seen as the ignorant one, and the teacher is like the one with all the knowledge. And usually, or typically, it's you sharing knowledge with these people and knowing that you can learn from your students as well, and not you being the embodiment of all the knowledge and all of that. And that's the same way we go into relate with communities, and you think that you are the one to save them or let's help them, but then they know what they want for themselves. And I think one significant part of that is listening. Like, I guess development practitioners don't do that. You just maybe based on what your donors want, and you're trying to do that, and you're not, taking into consideration what these people want for themselves and how they want to go about it. And someone was telling me a story of an indigenous community, I think in Zambia, where they had there was problem of food security there, and there was this huge international organization that was like, oh, this is happening and we have to go help them get food and all of that kind of stuff. And they went there and like had projects of like planting tomatoes and all sorts, vegetables and all of that. And they did not really get to know from the community perspective why food security was such a problem there. And they just went there, spent all their resources and money, and after the harvesting season, when they were supposed to like go and do all of that, the harvesting and all of that, they noticed that hippopotamus had come into those places and ate all of those things. And that was the problem. That was why they did not do farming, because they had that problem of animals coming into their farming area and eating all of their produce. And not because they did not want to produce, but because that was a problem. And that was the consequence of the organization not listening. You did not ask them why that is a problem. You think you want to go fix something for them, but and they're like, what, do what you want, and that was the consequence, and all of that money and resources went down the drain. So I think that's a very important part of doing development, is that you listen and not try to be the one with all the knowledge or think that you're the one that is doing all of these things, but try to work side by side with these people to realize things. If not, like, projects would not be sustainable. You go to places, you do projects and give it like 6 months, and the project is like non-existent because there's no continuity plan of how that is going to be sustained. So it's very important that we work and involve community and let them participate in whatever it is that you're doing. So so that's how it's contributing, getting their knowledge and doing things in communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this question, but as you mentioned, you can say it from your opinion and not speak, like, for instance, on behalf of the whole country of Canada. But for I guess, Canada, how do you think they can include Indigenous knowledge in, maybe I'll ask about, Vanessa, about food security and about climate change?
Again, like I said, I'll speak on behalf of what I see. But in my community, we do have the Northern Star, and I hear about the different prices and every day. And even when I go there, I just will not go to that store. It's prices are they're very high, and as well as already. So within my community, we do have a program. It's called Idento Bimitwin. So what they do is they harvest traditional foods and fish, and they give them to the elders and people who have like health related issues and stuff like that. So, and as well as people who can't go and have the means to go out and get the traditional foods. And so they actually bring it in, like hunters will bring it in, volunteers, and then, you know, they have a meat cutter there so that it's properly packaged, and then the meat is distributed in the community. So I think within that retrospect of that program, the community is being involved, and the community is harvesting the food and giving it to others who might not necessarily be able to access that, you know, moose meat. As well as I get some of my brother's actually an amazing hunter, and so when I go home, I have, you know, the privilege of being able to raid his fridge to get some wild meat and bring it back with me to Winnipeg, because, you know, that's what's sustaining me here, and because a lot of times, you know, I live off of that. So, you know, it's amazing that we're able to still do that. Now, again, like I said, it's not as prevalent as it used to be. Like, it's not as vast as it used to be. Sometimes they have to even travel further to go and get our traditional foods. So I think, like, within our community, like the food security there, with the store-bought foods, it's really at a disadvantage for my community now. To be able to have that program is actually an amazing program for our community. So I think that it's important that, you know, something like that continues on.
In terms of Indigenous knowledge in, like, as regards to food security, I think we're beginning to get that momentum. It's beginning to grow. You know, I know, for example, the University of Winnipeg just started like a cooperative course. That, so for, like, I work directly under the person, Simon Birch. He's like, what's his title? I'm not sure right now. But basically, we're looking at the cooperative model cooperative model as regards Indigenous development. So how do we apply Indigenous development in cooperatives as regards food? You know, so we're even working on a research paper right now, and we're taking case studies from different parts of the world. And actually, for Winnipeg, we're looking at the Nichi Commons and how they're creating that, you know, setting the pace for other cooperatives to, you know, take advantage of, you know, their food systems. And, like, even when I was working last year with IISD, I know that Brandon has, like, one of the largest community gardens, and in Canada per se, not in the world. Yeah, and one thing that they said was unique to them was the fact that they have so many newcomers there. So their community gardens have, like, a mix of different cultures, kind of food, you know, and they try to learn about the way other people's understanding of other people's food, and, you know, teach them about how it's grown, and, you know, try to eat some of them. And, you know, that way you're encouraging that people to build relationships through you know, community gardens, and people come together and they interact with each other. And I think that's very important in development, just having those personal relationships with people, you know. So I think it's not something that you can see right now, but it's in a matter of years. Definitely, that's something that's growing in terms of food security. People are wanting to take control of, you know, their own food and have that, you know, food sovereignty in terms of what they eat. And I know, especially, it's very hard in urban centers because they're like, not all places are like allowed for you to grow stuff because they're like city policies and all that kind of stuff. But people are wanting to get involved with, like, having their own community gardens and, doing that kind of stuff. So I know we might not see it now, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems to be there seems to be more interest in people learning where their food actually comes from as well. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Growing slowly, but
Yeah.
What do you think is the best? Again, another difficult question. What do you think is the best way to bridge the more Eurocentric, Western, scientific way of thinking with the Indigenous way? Because, well, this is my opinion, but I think the two can learn from each other, but oftentimes people don't see that or understand how, or if there is a way to bridge them. So the Indigenous holistic kind of circular way of thinking, I guess, do you think it's possible? And maybe just talk a little bit about how, if you think.
That's something that comes up in our classroom a lot, how we gonna bridge this. Someone says, let's integrate, but someone says that's the wrong word, you weave, so everything is at par with each other, you're on the same level. But then in the true sense, in the practical sense, how are we doing that? So I would give an example of, the Indigenous requirement now that's happening at the University of Winnipeg, and I heard that that's something that's actually underway also at the University of Manitoba, so that's one way, of bringing these two into the same place. But then we also have to be careful of that in the sense that, they're trying to bring things together and, the true sense of what it is you're bringing together gets lost in all of that kind of stuff. So it's also we have to be very conscious of how we're, weaving, per se, these two systems of knowledge. But I would say people should just have the choice to decide what form of education they want to get, and knowing that, one is equivalent to the other, that no one is superior to the other. I can decide to go to, maybe if we have like an Indigenous university, and I know that my degree is equivalent to someone who went to a Western university. That's the same thing, because people don't want to seem inadequate when they get to workplace. The world is getting so highly competitive, and you don't want to, be inadequate. So I think it's for us to have that understanding within ourselves that these two systems of knowledge, it's not like they're fighting each other. There are two ways of doing things. They're not necessarily against each other. I think it's just the way we put them together that tends to conflict, and we try to tokenize some of Indigenous knowledge and like, oh, let's just put this in there, and also it looks like, we're, presenting an equal front, but usually that's not the case. And I think it's just the mindsets, and if we're doing things together in terms of maybe projects or community work, or even in policy, that should reflect in our public policy and all of that everyone has an equal voice and is heard, and it reflects in the process. So I don't know, I think it's just being open to the fact that we should accept things and not, people try to fight what they don't understand, and I don't know. We'll figure that out, and when we do, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
So, the Western way, of course, the history of colonization in Canada, I don't really need to go in detail with that one. But I think when I look at this question, or when I think about it, again, from my own sense, is that far too long, the mainstream has tried to impose different programs, different policies, different services, whatever it might be, into communities, into our grassroots communities, even within our own, even with the urban community. I think what needs to occur is that our grassroots people do have that knowledge, do have the skills, do have the capacity to know what is going to work for their communities. And I think we need to learn to, the mainstream really needs to learn to not be so imposing on the communities and saying, this is what's going to help you, this is what you need, based on research that has been done. I think that with bridging Indigenous way and then the mainstream way, again, we already live in a society where there's technology, where there's a lot of mainstream stuff that are occurring, banks and whatever you may have it. So within communities, like if there's some, we still have been forced to live in we can't go back to what it was before. I understand that, but I also do really truly believe that we need to as well allow our communities to envision what they would like to see in their community and provide that space and that opportunity for them to not to be bombarded by something and rushed or to sign agreements and so on and so forth. And as well, I understand that, if there's something that's in the community, like, we do need to understand the systems of the mainstream way, whether it be, a Corporations Act, if you're, developing a nonprofit, whether it be, the business side of things, whether it be GAP from accounting principles, right? So because we still, when we're doing things in the community based on programs, based on services, based on, the financial stuff, we still do need to understand that knowledge as well. So in saying that, communities and the mainstream, yeah, we need to understand each other's knowledge systems, because that's just the way the world is now. Like I always think that, I wish I was born like 100 years ago, because it just seemed so peaceful back then. But again, we're here today though. Hey, so we have to. So that's the thing is that that's where I see that we need to respect one another. We need to know that we do both have something to bring to the table, and be very humble about it, and so not to step on each other's toes, but to work with one another, because that's the circular model. There's no top down. There's like we're all here together. So let's figure something out in a respectful way.
Great. So just in closing, I just want to find out also from Jen, if there's anything else you wanted to say about the program, in any way. Did we miss anything, or we covered what you thought? Or
in closing, like the Masters in Development program is as well. It's learning as well along the way. It's learning from every cohort that's coming in. It's learning how to adapt to different things as well, because you have many Indigenous communities coming in, many different points of view, perspectives coming in. So and as well as it's quite an intense course load, and it's quite an intense. You're living and breathing MDP, let me just say that. You go to bed thinking about MDP, you wake up thinking about MDP. And so I think there's going to be some changes in 2016 that are going to take into effect a lot of what the students have been saying, and a lot of what the Indigenous Advisory has been saying. So there's going to be some shift in the program, and so that will be coming in 2016. And so just wanted to, look forward to the new students being able to adapt to that new system. There's not a lot of changes. It's just, I guess, some program changes, some course changes. You're allowed to take some electives where, right now we're required to take certain courses, and we have to stick to those courses. So there's some changes coming, and so just to look forward to that. Prior to the coursework starting, there's an orientation piece, and since its inception, MDP has been partnering up with Fisher River First Nation. And what occurs is that when I was doing my orientation, we went to Fisher River for a week, and we were able to learn from their elders and then visit all their programs, from the health to the education. And as well, we were able to stay in their youth cabin, which the youth are the ones that run it. And so we're able to learn right off the hop, get put in the same building and learn and get to know each other. And that's the very first interaction we get with our cohort. So when I came, I had a person from a couple people from Africa, Ghana, which is in Africa. That's what I said. That's what I'm learning. Because before I thought Africa was like this big country. I'm like, okay, everything's Africa. Then it's like, no, Ghana. And so that's why when they talk about their indigenous community, they have different tribes, different cultures, different. So it's really interesting. But that's where we were able to, first just be able to develop that first relationship. And it's a good way because, it's not so intense. It's not coursework. It's just like getting to know each other and getting to know different teachings from the traditional teachers and as well, so being able to engage with one another in a positive, good way right off the hop. So I guess with the Master's Development Practice Indigenous Development Program, we have the opportunity to get scholarships and bursaries that assist us with our tuition, because our tuition is very large. It's about over 19,000. So it alleviates a lot of when we do have the opportunity to have those scholarships. Students are told that 50% of your tuition will be paid through scholarships. So or more. So it's not, no one's below 50. So right now that's how it is. So I think that really, helps a lot because of, the very large amount of scholarships that are offered and towards the tuition. So I think that's important to grasp in there that we have that opportunity. And, I'm very grateful for the different places that have given me that opportunity and have up their corporate social responsibility to providing that that incentive as well for some. And then there's philanthropists that give money, and so it's really amazing to be able to say that I've been given this scholarship. So because this year I got the Duffer Oblin, so to be able to be in the room with Judge Murray Sinclair when he was given the Duffer Oblin Award, and as well as another student from the Indigenous Studies, and our, showcased our videos there. So it was really an honor because, first time I ever meeting Carolyn, what do we call her? Honorable Carolyn Bennett, and she was there, and, she's, to me, everyone's just the same, at the same level, but, to be able to get a handshake and say, congratulations, and, be able to hug Duffer Oblin's daughter to say that, I'm so honored to be given this scholarship. So I think that's important to throw in there.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. It was such a pleasure to meet you guys. And that's all for this episode of Thunder Radio. I just want to thank Vanessa and Adesuwa for visiting us. It was very inspiring to hear about their work. And when I meet young people like them, I feel like the future is in good hands. We hope you enjoyed listening, and be sure to tune in next time.